he is, God, he has got so much damn potential.
He definitely does.
So
but he comes back from every fight that he's had better, you know? I mean, when one of the most impressive ones was he knocked out Klitschko. Oh my God.
Klitschko's seen better days though.
Change, another inconsistency in Anthony Joshua. I now understand, I believe having watched this, where Jake Paul is getting his confidence from. How he's built this narrative in his head that he genuinely has a chance. I think the thing to remember here though, is that Anthony Joshua doesn't struggle against all smaller fighters.
This might be his last fight, getting in there with Anthony Joshua and getting knocked out.
Joe Rogan and Mike Tyson sit down to break down the Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua matchup, pointing out just how different these two fighters really are. Tyson stresses that Joshua needs to manage his power because Jake simply isn't operating at the same level. Rogan calls Joshua one of the most intimidating guys in the sport, and he warns that Paul is stepping into dangerous territory, especially since Paul's experience mostly comes from exhibitions against older or retired opponents.
It's one of the craziest propositions of all time. You take a guy who just had a boxing match that looks like a sparring match with a 58-year-old Mike Tyson, and then you're gonna fight one of the absolute scariest knockout artists in the heavyweight division. Maybe we should watch the Francis Ngannou fight so you could see. Let's watch that real quick, just so you can see what Anthony Joshua is capable if he's fighting someone that's not in his league. Okay, look, Usyk beat him, and he beat him twice, and Andy Ruiz caught him in the first fight and dropped him and stopped him. It was spectacular. Andy Ruiz is super fucking talented. Usyk is perhaps the greatest heavyweight.
The host of The Wade Concept lays out why, for Jake Paul, taking a single knockout shot from Joshua might actually be safer than absorbing punches for 8 full rounds. His logic is straightforward. Sustained damage can lead to long-lasting injuries that go far beyond the fight itself. Even with Joshua wearing the smaller 10-ounce gloves for this matchup, a quick knockout, while dramatic, limits the amount of long-term physical punishment Paul would take. It gives the fight a clear endpoint rather than exposing him to repeated trauma. The host emphasizes that this context flips the way people should view the bout. Despite the exhibition-style setup, the danger for Paul is still very real. Joshua has been required to use the lighter gloves to make the event more appealing for fans and media, adding to the spectacle while trying to keep the power somewhat controlled. But even with that adjustment, the threat remains. Joshua's knockout ability is well known, and with less padding, those punches could become even more damaging. In the end, the glove change is a technical tweak, one that doesn't erase the huge gap in power, ability, and experience between the two men. Every shot Joshua throws still comes with serious consequences.
The thing is, there really is only one outcome that can hurt Jake in this scenario, and that's that he gets viciously knocked out. Or he gets beat up really bad for 8 rounds and then viciously knocked out. I saw Nikisa talking on Ariel Helwani's show today about this, about like how it's not necessarily something they're worried about that Jake gets knocked out, because he's not afraid of the one-punch knockout as much as he's afraid of like Jake getting beat up for 8 rounds badly and it, you know, causing some real cognitive damage. And there is science behind the fact that the more repeated head trauma is the more dangerous thing about pro boxing, because those gloves, you can get hit, you get 8 to 10 seconds to stand, and you can repeat it 2-3 times in the same fight, just absorbing punch after punch. So in the totality of Jake getting like knocked out cold, is that the worst thing possible for his health? I mean, who knows, dude? You could have a freaking brain aneurysm when you get hit off one shot from a guy like AJ. Again, knock on wood, you don't want to see any of that happen. If his career ends because AJ hurts him badly, then yes. But if it's a knockout where Jake is able to then continue fighting, people will still watch. It may not be as big as the AJ fight, but he still has an opportunity to make money in boxing. Again, the only way it wouldn't be the case is if Jake got like permanently injured from this fight, which is part of the reason that they take this fight, is because Jake doesn't really have anything to lose here outside of, again, the bodily harm. You know, you fight a guy like Tommy Fury again, which I want to see, I think is more competitive, but doesn't bring the eyes that AJ does. So again, this is the entertainment business, and these Netflix fights are made for a massive audience. But you lose to Tommy Fury again, even by decision, that deflates Jake more than a knockout from Anthony Joshua. A loss to KSI deflates Jake more than a loss to Anthony Joshua. This is a perfect, even if Jake would have gotten just schooled by Gervonta Davis, it would have deflated him more than a knockout, I think. Yeah, it's a lot of risk, A lot of reward, but as far as your marketability, as long as you don't get permanently
Nakisa Bidarian explains why Anthony Joshua was chosen as Jake Paul's opponent in the first place. Since the fight is being documented for Netflix, the team needed a matchup that would deliver high-impact visuals and a strong storyline. They had to weigh things like star power, media buzz, and what viewers expect to see. Joshua checked every box. As a former world champion with global recognition, he instantly boosts the event's marketability. His involvement raises the stakes and sets up a narrative that's compelling for both the audience and promotional partners. With Netflix capturing every moment, the build-up and the fight itself become even more dramatic.
And, Jake Paul being Jake Paul, he wanted to focus on the biggest, baddest names possible. That included Terrence Crawford. That included Ryan Garcia. That included Tommy Fury. That included Anthony Joshua. And we probably had, 30 or 40 names that we kind of reviewed. And I will say at least 12 or 13 names that agreed to do the fight. Some within the 2-week period, actually. But from a Netflix perspective, they were very keen on Joshua. They were interested on Crawford. They were interested in Ryan Garcia as potential opponents for Jake Paul. They were interested in Tommy Fury at some level as well. And the one that Jake gravitated towards was Anthony Joshua. Once it became clear Ryan couldn't do the fight as well, Ryan was also something that he was interested in doing. And the deal came together mostly because Jake mentioned this as of March of this year, right? That's the first time he was on a podcast and said, I think I can beat Anthony Joshua. Everyone laughed. At the time, Eddie Hearn said this is another, media attention-seeking moment for Jake Paul. I made it clear then to Eddie and to the media, Jake was serious and we wanted to do it in 2026. We had further conversations with Matchroom in July of this year with the understanding that if Jake got through Tank Davis, and even though that was an exhibition, it was very much structured to be a real fight in every way, shape, and form, then we would look to make Jake versus Joshua in 2026. So that gave us a head start in terms of trying to come to an agreement with Matchroom and AJ, and we were able to get it done.
I just want to ask about a couple of those names that you mentioned. Garcia's interesting because a day or so later, Oscar De La Hoya said, he's a DAZN fighter, this ain't happening, and of course we know there's no bigger DAZN name than...
Ryan Garcia talks about just how much this fight could change Jake Paul's life if it goes badly. He reminds everyone that Joshua's power is no joke, and a loss could hurt Paul not only physically, but also in terms of his reputation and the direction of his career. Garcia suggests that the experience could be eye-opening for Paul, underscoring the massive challenge ahead of him. He stresses that Joshua's strength and technical ability make this a genuine test, and the consequences of failure are very real. For Paul, training, preparation, and full awareness of the risks are essential as he steps in with someone as dangerous as Joshua.
Opinion, I think that this has been a misstep from Jake. I think he wanted to make his partners at Netflix a little too happy, and he's gonna walk into it. But look it. He loses to AJ. Where does he go from here? Who does he fight? You gonna go back down to 135?
The problem is not that he loses to AJ. The problem is the way he's gonna lose to AJ might be life changing.
Right.
So that's the real issue.
It could be life changing in many ways, right? Physically.
Yeah.
See what he did in Nagano? It's like. But then again, if he gets knocked out, he gets knocked out. Nobody.
Frank Martin points out that even though the fight brings a massive payday, it's still a brutally tough assignment for Jake Paul. Money doesn't erase the danger involved, and Martin believes Paul should have thought long and hard about what he's getting into. He makes it clear that this isn't just a cash grab, the stakes are very real. Paul is facing a veteran with serious power and elite experience, something no amount of marketing or celebrity influence can compensate for. The financial reward might be big, but the physical and reputational risks are just as significant.
I consider Jake now, I wouldn't consider him like a YouTube fighter no more. I feel like he put in the time, he gotten better throughout all his fights, he done got better throughout all those fights, But it's still when you fighting fighters who actually done it for like their whole life, it's a little different. You know, if that fight happened, it'll be a good money fight. It'll be a good money fight. But that's a tough task for, you know what I'm saying, Jake going to get that big ass heavyweight AJ. You know, I know AJ personally, you know, so that's a tough task.
That wraps up today's breakdown. Make sure to stick around for more updates, and we'll catch you in the next one.